Yat Bene. Good morning, my relatives. This is Mark Charles, sitting down with my second cup of coffee. It is Friday, July 14, and I wanted to have a conversation about some of the things going on in our nation right now. But before I begin, let me do as I always do, which is I want to acknowledge I'm speaking to you from what's now called Washington, D.C., but these are the traditionalists, the Piscataway. I want to honor the Piscataway as the hosts of the land where I'm living. I want to thank them for their stewardship of these lands and just state how humbled I am to be living on these lands today. So, where do I begin? Well, let me start with where I was yesterday. Yesterday, if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I went out, flew out to Phoenix on Wednesday evening, and Wednesday evening I flew out to Phoenix. Actually, Wednesday night I flew out to Phoenix, and I recorded. I was invited to participate in an interview for a documentary that's being made regarding the long walk. It was actually a documentary that was almost finished. They were nearly done filming, and they were working on editing it. And then one of the consultants for the documentary, which is covering issues regarding the long walk, came to my presentation at the Navajo Nation Museum, and he heard me lay out the information on Abraham Lincoln and how the long walk was just a part of Abraham Lincoln's very vast policy of ethnic cleansing to complete the Transcontinental Railway. And they felt it was such an important aspect that was missing from the documentary that they actually decided to start to do some more recording. They flew me down to Phoenix, and I was able to record yesterday. I think it's only going to be about a 10 or 15 minute segment of the documentary is my guess. But we recorded for almost 2 hours. I was able to cover a lot of stuff. We talked about the whole issue of manifest destiny and how the nation felt it had a right to control, to rule these lands from sea to shining sea. We talked very clearly about Abraham Lincoln and his policies, as well as his white supremacist attitudes and sayings and speeches. And then we covered things like the trauma of white America and what we need to do to engage in more national dialogue around these issues. We also talked about truth and conciliation and common memory. It was a great discussion. We were probably recording for over 2 hours, and at the end of the recording, the person who was interviewing me said, "Wow, I think I could talk for another 5 hours if we had the time." But anyway, I don't know how the editing is going to go. They actually want me to be involved in that. One of the things I was sharing with them about the work I'm doing, and especially regarding Abraham Lincoln and talking about his true legacy, is I said, in the American psyche, Abraham Lincoln is almost on the level of a god. And you can't just deconstruct or kind of open the door on one part of his legacy, because people so want to cling to the narrative that he was a hero and a great guy and a wonderful man, that if you leave even the slightest opening of them to say, well, yes, but there's still this, and they're going to cling to that. And so I said, this is why we have to both confront his white supremacist attitudes as well as his ethnic cleansing and genocidal policies towards Native peoples. And so I said, if you don't do that, if you don't cover that fully, the documentary will come off as unbelievable. If we only cover one aspect of it, just his genocidal policies, it'll feel like they're coming out of nowhere, and people will say that's not true or that's not fully what it is. And so, so it led to a very long discussion, and even the film crew who was there said they learned a lot and had their eyes open to a lot of things during the interview. So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. I see Mr. Phil Fox is on. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining this morning. So I was very excited to go down and talk with I filmed that interview yesterday. And then this came out the other day, and I'm going to put this up onto the chat. But Native News Online, about a month and a half ago, recorded an interview with me regarding Abraham Lincoln as well. And they put it out as an article 2 or 3 days ago, earlier this week. It's called Native Bidaské. It's kind of an open forum, kind of a vlogcast that they do. And I spoke with Levi Rickert. And so that is an article which has a link to the YouTube video. But if you'd like to watch just the YouTube video, I'm going to put that chat in there as well. And so I'm going to put that in there. Oh, and I also forgot to share with you, I actually uploaded some of the pictures that we took while filming the other day. And so here's one of the pictures that we took. You can see I'm sitting there with my cup of coffee, and there's the interviewer in front of me, and it was a great chance to just kind of record the interview. And I really love the professionalism of the crew, and it was a fun morning. Started early. We were in Phoenix. I flew in Wednesday night. It was probably about midnight that I landed. It was still 100 degrees outside. And the next day it was 112 degrees when I was there. And so, yeah, Phoenix in the summer, it feels like an oven. And I'm going to talk a little more about that later when we talk about global warming stuff. But that was just a few of the pictures I wanted to share with you. But yeah, so anyway, here's the link to the interview I did with Native News Online. And again, that interview goes actually, it's directly addressing Abraham Lincoln and the Long Walk and Navajo Treaty Days. And so there's a very good layout of Abraham Lincoln's policies in that interview as well, which you're welcome to see. And so I'm very excited. I'm very excited that this interview came out with Native News Online. I'm very excited to film this documentary. I'm in the process, as I've shared before, about developing this 75-minute presentation specifically on Abraham Lincoln, and that's also going well. And I just feel like there's slowly gaining some momentum as I continue talking and sharing and kind of debunking the myth of Abraham Lincoln and laying out some of the true history and his legacy and what he really stood for and what he was really doing. And one of my goals is to really make Abraham Lincoln and his white supremacist and genocidal policies a part of the 2024 election campaign. I'm not running for office, but I would love to see this discussion rise to the level where candidates are getting asked questions about it. And they're saying, hey, I'd love to see them have to answer questions about, why do you support Abraham Lincoln? Why does the Republican Party call themselves the Party of Lincoln? Why did President Obama lay his hand on the Lincoln Bible when he was a stated white supremacist and ethnically cleansing Native peoples throughout his entire term in office? I would love to see those questions being posed to the candidates. So I'm very excited to be making some progress and at least getting that information out there. And that's been exciting. The other stuff I wanted to share, and we'll probably have a more fuller discussion about this, but I've just been following some of the news lately. And I'm going to share this one story from NPR. This came out just the other day. And it's regarding the number of mass shootings. And then here's another article I'm going to share. This is out of AP, which talks about the number of mass killings we've had in our country this year. And so we've had over 300 mass shootings in our country so far this year, getting closer to 400. When the article in NPR was written, we had 346 mass shootings. A mass shooting is defined as an act of gun violence that injures or kills at least 4 people. And a mass killing is an event that kills 4 or more people. And so we've been having an average of not quite 2 a day, maybe even around 2 a day for this entire year of 2023. And this is just an astronomically high number of violent incidents and gun violence in our nation that is taking place. I encourage you to look at both of these articles, and especially if you even go back just a few weeks ago, July 4th, especially here in DC, was an incredibly violent, and DC has been having actually a rise in violence throughout our city this past year. And on the 4th of July, there was a number of deadly shootings in our city, throughout our city on July 4th. And some of them took place literally not too far from our home. The district is not a very big place, and it, there were few of the shootings that took place on July 4th that were not too far from where we live here in DC. And so it feels like it's not just something that's on the news. It's something that's happening in the communities and in the neighborhoods where even we're living. And of course, there's been always this very heated debate in our country, dominated by the Democrats and Republicans, and screaming at one another over the 13th Amendment. And I've talked about the 13th Amendment the Second Amendment. I've talked about this amendment in the past. And I want to just again look at the language of the Second Amendment. It's not a very long amendment, right? It says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So this amendment lays out the exact two sides that the left and the right take. It first says a well-regulated militia. Now, a militia is a civilian army. And it talks about that this militia, the civilian army, needs to be regulated. This is necessary for the security of the free state. And then the second half of this amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so this is the debate we have on the left and the right, right? The left says, well, we have to regulate guns, we have to regulate this militia, these civilians. And the right says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And this debate goes back and forth, and we rarely, if ever, make any progress. Meanwhile, the amount of gun violence in our cities and in our country continues to rise. I think we're on record to break the 2006 numbers, which was one of the highest years we've had recently in our country. And the challenge is no one's talking about, again, the underlying narrative behind this amendment. Right? So this amendment was a part of the Bill of Rights, brought in with nearly right at almost the same time as the passing of the Constitution in 1787. And in 1787, right, so the U.S. had just won its freedom from the U.K., from Great Britain, and it was establishing its own government. And one of its biggest concerns, as laid out in the Declaration of Independence, was these merciless Indian savages, right? Even the Declaration said whose only known rule of warfare is the complete destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So why did this nation need a well-regulated militia? Well, to keep their cities and their towns safe from these merciless Indian savages. Why else did this nation need a well-regulated militia, civilian army? Well, because this was a slave nation. And it was literally not imprisoning, but holding millions of people against their will and forcing them to work. And so when you do that, of course, there's always a fear or a danger that population will rise up and rebel against you. And so what do you need to protect yourself if you're a young country and you don't have a large police force or anything like that? Well, you need a well-regulated militia. So again, this amendment was about protecting the colonists, now the citizens, from merciless Indian savages and from the uprising and the running away of enslaved peoples. Then the second part of this Amendment, right? The right of the people to keep and bear arms. And I've said this before, the people. Our Constitution begins with the words, we the people. Article 1, Section 2, defining who the people is. It never mentions women, specifically excludes natives, and counts Africans as 3/5 of a person. Who does that leave? That means white men, and it's white landowning men who could vote. So when it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms, the group of people, the population, the demographic that are the founders of this nation defined as people was white landowning men. That's who this amendment was written to protect, right? This amendment is dripping with implicit and explicit racial bias. We rarely, if ever, talk about that. But this is one of the problems we face, and so this is where this problem seems so overwhelming, because yes, you have the far right who is right. They are fighting adamantly hard for the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And the left is saying we need a well-regulated militia. But neither side is addressing the underlying racism and white supremacy that's implicit and explicit within this amendment. And so when we have solutions coming forward, right? And right now there is a solution being proposed, and Governor Gavin Newsom in California actually is working right now he proposed a 28th Amendment. I'm going to share this story. This is in Politico. I'm going to share this with you. I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from this. Let me turn off this chat here. Not the chat, the caption. So just a few excerpts from this article in Politico I just shared. The Democratic governor's proposal would raise the federal minimum age to buy a firearm to 21 from 18, mandate universal background checks, institute a reasonable waiting period for all gun purchases, and ban assault rifles nationally. Now, not that these are bad things, right? It's not that the left is making bad arguments of what needs to be regulated, right? These are actually not bad suggestions, and it's not a bad amendment. But if it's being built off of the Second Amendment, which again has the implicit, explicit racial bias built into it, and it doesn't redefine who our founding fathers understood to be people, it's not necessarily going to fix the problem, at least not the underlying problem. The article goes on to say Newsom acknowledged the seemingly unimaginable hurdles to creating a 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. But his plan is distinctly Newsom, designed to draw maximum public attention to an issue where he sees Americans' views as being far ahead of their governments. And there is research out there is data that says most Americans actually support common sense gun laws, and I don't deny that. That is out there. But the problem is, while most Americans support that, you have this far right group of people who are absolutely adamant that they're not going to give up their rights at all. And this is where I think we need even more passion in this, even a deeper sense of commitment. And this is why I think we also need to address this problem, not just at the common sense level, but at the foundational level, and say, yeah, this needs to be a part of this much larger thing that we're doing, that I'm trying to do, that others are trying to do, which is let's build a nation where we the people actually means all the people. Let's address the racism, the sexism, and the white supremacy written into our foundations. Now, this debate right now is obviously having much harder gaining traction because it's such a fundamental change, but there definitely is a drive there. right? The people who are working towards this and the people who are committed, are doing this, are deeply committed people. And so I don't think, I'm watching Governor Newsom's proposal and his amendment with interest. I'm not convinced it's the solution. I think it's not a horrible Band-Aid, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to put on a Band-Aid, when for a little more work and a bringing the conversation to a much deeper level, we can actually do something that will impact not just guns, but the broader challenges that we face as a nation. So anyway, this is some of my thoughts about the what's going on in the debate, and I'm welcome you to share your thoughts on the chat and to say where you feel you stand on this. But I think these are some of the things that we actually really need to be very aware of. The last thing I want to share with you is this article I saw in AP this morning. Or not the last thing, but the next thing. And it was just, it's a list of photos of the heat wave that we're facing as a nation and even as a globe right now, right? This is an incredibly hot year. I don't know where we are in the record books, but the Southwest especially is in a huge, massive heat wave. The Northeast is getting pummeled by floods right now. Obviously, we have the wildfires in Canada, and other places like China and Europe and other nations are having extreme problems with rising heat and all the things that go along with that. And so there's a lot of photos that they posted on this. They're just trying to capture some of what people are doing to address the heat. And there was one photo that really caught my attention. And you can see here, this is a picture of Hollywood. But here, this picture caught my attention because obviously this is meant to understand that, right? It's the burning of fossil fuels, which is driving this extreme heat. And this photo is a picture of a plane taking off from Sky Harbor International Airport, which is the airport in Phoenix. This picture was taken on July 12th. Actually, it's the night I flew into Phoenix, and then again I flew out yesterday. And I will be honest, this picture caused me to stop and think, because obviously, even when it comes to the burning of fossil fuels, right, travel by airplane is one of the things that is incredibly damaging to the environment, and the amount of carbon footprint that you have when you fly is very high. And this year, I have seen my speaking schedule increase from a rate from the pandemic, where over the 2 years of the pandemic, I actually didn't travel at all, and I was home for 2 years straight. During the pandemic, we actually stopped driving our Toyota, our Chevy Traverse, which was getting about 15 miles to the gallon, and we bought a Honda Hybrid to get even better gas mileage. Now we get between 45 and 50 miles a gallon, right? And we've made a lot of other choices as a family to reduce our carbon footprint and to look at our recycling and using of plastics and reducing all of those things. And now this year, as my speaking schedule picks up, I'm flying more than I've flown in a number of years. And I'm trying to think about, what do I need to do, or how can I work with this? What do I need to do to be responsible in this age where not only do you hear these stories, right? I was in Phoenix. Phoenix is probably in the middle of one of its longest stretches ever of days over 110 degrees. I think it was 13 or 14 when I was there. It was 112 the day before, 114 the day before I got there. It was 112 on Thursday. It's supposed to be over 110 today. I looked on the map. It's supposed to be 110 for the next 10 days or higher in Phoenix. So they're going to break a record most likely. And I was there. It literally feels like you're walking around in an oven, right? The flooding that's going on in Northeast the northeast coast here. This is not far from where we're living. We've seen the smoke from the Canadian wildfires. It's affected the quality of life here in DC. And so, on one hand, yes, we've been making some changes as a family. We've been doing some things, but there's these other things that haven't changed. And yes, I do some events. I do some events locally and are on virtually, and I'm able to do stuff online. But I'm this that picture I showed is really this picture. It really gave me pause, and I'm going to come back to it because I'm trying to think about what do I need to do and what are some ways that practical adjustments can be made. Um, because obviously air travel has a huge impact on the carbon footprint we all have. So anyway, this is a way that this really hit me personally. After all the intentional changes we tried to make as things go back to normal after the pandemic of COVID, I realized, yeah, my travel schedule is just as busy. My flight schedule is just as busy as it was before the pandemic, and possibly even getting busier. And so I'm grateful for even just seeing that photo and being challenged by it. And I'm going to come back to it. And yeah, we'll hopefully talk some more about that. Anyway, that was one of the thoughts I had as I was going through this. But I'm deeply grateful for a chance to be home. One of the things I did, I said I did go to Phoenix over the weekend, over this week, and I was only there for like less than 36 hours. I flew in late Friday night. I flew in about 11:30 and then 11:30 Friday night or Wednesday night, and I left 5:30 Thursday evening to come back to DC. I was in Phoenix less than 24 hours. And it was great. I actually loved it because, again, I'm starting to travel more after COVID, and I realized being home for 2 years straight, I really like being home. I love having face-to-face speaking events, and I love doing things in person. But I also really like being home with my family, and being around and cooking dinners and hanging out as a family. And so I'm working very hard to keep my trips as short as possible. Fly in, do what I'm there to do, and come back. So, what normally would be a 2.5 to 3 day trip, I literally did in about 36 hours, or not even that, probably even 30 hours yesterday. It was a late night. I got there late, but I had dinner with my family Wednesday night, jumped on an airplane at 9:30, got there, went to bed, woke up, did the interview, went back to the airport, came back here, got to bed at 2:30 last night. But so it was 2 short nights, but it means I get to be with my family. And today I'm going to take my daughters out this afternoon, and we're going to be around for the weekend. So anyway, yeah, I'm excited to be able to have this kind of new priority of what can I do to keep my trips shorter as my travel schedule continues to pick up. I also want to make sure that if you would like to get a signed copy of my book on selling truths, that is still available on my website. You can also buy a 10-pack of signed books from my website and for a book study. And if you do that, I will give you a 45-minute virtual Q&A with your book study to ask questions about the book and about its content. And you can schedule that anytime up to a year after you do the purchase. So that is available. And during the month of June, I was offering free shipping. And we're not promoting free shipping anymore, but I haven't turned off the free shipping on my website yet. So if you order a book today, free shipping is still there. I'm guessing sometime over the weekend I'm going to turn that off. I just need to sit down and change the settings on my website. I also am going to be busy these next few weeks with some work on my Patreon. And if you want to join the conversation, help take a deeper level there, you can always subscribe to me on Patreon. But I'm actually very excited. I'm going to be home for the next month. I don't have any travel now until the middle of August. And so I'm looking forward to being home with family and being able to work on some stuff. I really want to get some writing done this next month. And I'm looking forward to being around and being more consistent, especially with my second cup of coffee. Anyway, my relatives, that's kind of what's going on. I hope you have a great day. Uh, I see there's a few people online here. Tempest Lord, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, but Yate, howdy. Thanks for joining today. Um, Ava, thank you for joining. I appreciate your joining this conversation. Michael Lee, Yate, thank you. It's good to have you here. I appreciate everyone who joins me for my second cup of coffee. I hope all of you have a great day and walk in beauty, my relatives. May we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Okay, I'm not going there.